Interview to ABC News during her visit to Africa. Joining me now to break this all down is White House reporter for Politico, Nancy Cook, and also Washington Post reporter Emily Hiles. So I want to begin with that family separation policy. The First Lady went on to explain how she expressed her opinion to her husband. Let's listen to that.
I didn't know that that policy will come out. I was blindsided by it. I told him at home, and I said to him that I feel that's unacceptable, and he felt the same.
All right, Nancy, should we credit the First Lady with President Trump's reversal on the separation policy? And does it say anything about our influence within the White House?
Well, I think that she was one of many voices who had a problem with that. As you remember, there was about 4 weeks of really negative media coverage about it. There was a lot of images of children being kept in cages, and I think that that caused a lot of blowback. And there was a bunch of religious leaders who came out against it, Republicans on Capitol Hill. And so I certainly think that Melania Trump had some influence there, but I also think that there was a wide range, a very large chorus of people that opposed that, and she was one of many. But it is interesting to hear in her own words her talking about the way that she talks to her husband about policy, because for the most part she's been pretty quiet about her thoughts on his policies and how she speaks to him. Well,
one of the things that we all were talking about here, it's almost like the most talked about jacket was that one that she wore when she was visiting the border, that khaki jacket or you know, olive green one that read, "I really don't care, do you?" So Emily, you know, when it comes to that, here's what she had to say, and then we'll talk about it.
You know, I often asking myself if I would not wear that jacket, if I would have so much media coverage. It's obvious I didn't wear the jacket for the children. I wore the jacket to go on the plane and off the plane. And it was for the people and for the left-wing media who are criticizing me, and I want to show them that I don't care.
So you were sending a message with the jacket?
It was kind of a message, yes.
All right, so she's echoing President Trump's tweet at the time of her border visit. But Emily, it seems like a very carefully crafted response. And you got to remember, when she first wore that jacket, remember we heard from her camp and they said, hey, there's no messaging when it comes to what she's wearing, the words behind that.
Yeah, so this is a completely different version of this than what we were told at the time. At the time, it was, oh, it's just a jacket. And now she's saying, oh, yeah, it was a message, which we knew all along. I mean, they were words written on the back of her clothing. So how could it be anything other than a message? We just didn't know what it meant. And so, but her answer that it was obvious that it wasn't toward the children, well, no, it wasn't obvious at all, because it was a strange message. We didn't know who it was directed to. So if she's now saying that it was directed at the media, and what I found very interesting is in this answer too was clearly she's echoing her husband. This is a partisan response as well. It was left-wing media. So the First Lady is not only in this interview and in previous interviews that she's done very critical of the media, and in that way sounds so much like her husband. And that's what I was struck really in this interview was, you know, despite the few things that she disagrees with her husband on, the, you know, the border separation policies, which as it turns out he agreed with her, she sounded just like a Trump. She echoed many of the things that President Trump said. She sounded like him in other ways. She said that, you know, she thinks she could be the most bullied person in the world. Most bullied. That's such a Trumpian kind of, you know, go to the superlative. I am the most something. I am the most X. You know, using that superlative form sounded like a Trump. And that was so interesting because we've heard so little from this First Lady since her husband took office. And so I think there's been some projecting on her. Right, she's sort of this blank canvas, and people imagine that, you know, maybe she was the secret resistance within the White House, or that she was secretly a feminist, or that, you know, she actually hates her husband. And so this interview, I think, it took any of that, you know, any of that idea away. Just stick a fork in that, because that is not the case.
One of the also things, important things that she brought up too when it comes to this, Nancy, she responded for the first time to the accusations and allegations about the president and extramarital affairs, and here's what she had to say about that. We'll talk about it after.
It is not concern and focus of mine. I'm a mother and a First Lady, and I have much more important things to think about and to do.
Have you been hurt, though?
Media everybody's speculating. Yeah, it's not always pleasant, of course, but I know what is right and what is wrong and what is true and not true.
So Nancy, was that the only way that she could have answered that?
I think so. And, you know, you have to keep in mind that she and the president, you know, while I do think that they share a much more similar worldview, as Emily was saying, than people have necessarily projected on her, they also lead day-to-day fairly separate lives. You know, they live in separate rooms in the residence. You know, she has her cyberbullying campaign. They don't always travel together. You know, he's going to a rally tonight in Kentucky. I don't believe she's going with him. And so, you know, I think that that was probably the most honest answer she could give, but I also think that part of in that answer is shades of just the idea that they do live very separate lives on a day-to-day basis. She is very focused on Barron and is not always with him, and I think that that answer gave us some insight into that.
Yeah, Emily, before we go, last few minutes here, what was your takeaway when it comes to the First Lady really hearing from her in this sit-down?
You know, I was also struck by what a missed opportunity it was. Melania Trump is still very much a mystery to all of us, and she would say things in the interview like, you know, I'm still the same person that I was, you know, before I came to the White House, but we still don't know who that is. She struck a very defensive tone, spent a lot of time criticizing the media, but didn't really give any glimpse inside of who she is. And I still think that that's something people want to know. People are still very curious about her, but she seems just incredibly intensely private and is not going to be, just doesn't seem willing to open up at all. And in some ways, I have to think that may be a conscious choice.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that she, you know, has decided that that's just not going to be the kind of First Lady that she is. She's not going to be mom dancing on Jimmy Kimmel. That's just not going to be the kind of First Lady she is. But she could let people in just a little bit, I think, and I think that people might feel differently about her, and, you know, they might feel very sympathetic toward her.
Yeah, and there is that venue where their platform is cyberbullying on that too, which, you know, the moment you bring that up, you take into account the president and the way he tweets and attacks the media and others as well. To Nancy Cook and Emily Heil, excuse me, thank you both.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back.
Fidelity is redefining value for investors. Introducing